Miracle. Teen photographer almost died from cyberbullying. How Jesus found her in the darkness will shock you. Before we begin, this true story will transform your perspective on purpose through pain. If you want more powerful testimonies like this, subscribe now and hit the bell. It only takes 2 seconds and helps us bring hope to more hearts. Let's begin. In the heart of Orlando, Florida, where palm trees swayed against endless blue skies and dreams seemed as bright as the sunshine, 15-year-old Brooklyn Rose Martinez had found her calling behind the camera lens. At Winter Park High School, she was known as the quiet, artistic girl who could capture emotions in ways that made teachers stop and stare. Her photography wasn't just pictures, it was poetry frozen in time, stories told without words that somehow reached deep into people's souls and made them feel understood. Brooklyn lived with her mother Carmen, a devoted nurse who worked double shifts at Orlando Regional Medical Center, and her 12-year-old brother Mateo, whose infectious laughter could brighten even her darkest days. Their modest apartment in the College Park neighborhood was filled with Brooklyn's framed photographs covering every wall, sunset reflections on Lake Eola, homeless veterans she'd met downtown, children playing in Lock Haven Park. Each image told a story of hope, beauty, and human dignity that revealed her heart for seeing the sacred in the ordinary. "Mija, you have a gift that comes straight from God," Carmen would tell her daughter while admiring her latest work. "Your camera sees what others miss because your heart sees what others ignore." Brooklyn's photography teacher, Mrs. Elena Rodriguez, had already submitted several of her pieces to statewide competitions, and college scouts were beginning to notice the extraordinary talent emerging from this unassuming teenager who seemed to have an old soul in a young body. Every morning before school, Brooklyn would walk through downtown Orlando with her beloved Canon camera, a 15th birthday gift that Carmen had saved for months to afford. She'd capture the golden hour light filtering through Spanish moss, the hopeful faces of people starting their day, the architectural beauty of a city that was constantly growing and changing. Photography wasn't just her hobby, it was her language, her way of communicating with a world that often felt too loud and overwhelming for her sensitive spirit. Her Instagram account, Brooklyn Lens Art, had gained a modest but devoted following of 2,000 people who appreciated her artistic eye and positive captions about finding beauty in everyday moments. She'd post images with thoughtful quotes about hope, perseverance, and seeing God's hand in creation. "Every sunrise is a love letter from heaven," she'd written under a particularly stunning shot of Lake Eola at dawn. Her followers genuinely loved her authentic voice and unique perspective on life in Central Florida. That particular September morning felt different somehow, charged with possibility and creative energy that Brooklyn couldn't quite explain. She was preparing for the biggest opportunity of her young career, the State of Florida High School photography competition, where the winner would receive a full scholarship to the prestigious Ringling College of Art and Design. Mrs. Rodriguez had encouraged her to submit her most powerful piece, a black and white portrait series called Invisible Angels, featuring homeless individuals in downtown Orlando, each image accompanied by their personal stories of hope despite hardship. As Brooklyn adjusted her camera settings and prepared to capture what would become the most controversial photograph of her life, she had no idea that this single image would trigger 18 months of digital hell that would nearly cost her everything. She couldn't have imagined that the same gift God had given her to bless others would soon become the weapon used to destroy her spirit, her reputation, and almost her very life. But sometimes, the darkest storms come right before the most beautiful dawns, and Brooklyn's story was about to take a turn that would test every ounce of faith she'd ever possessed. The image that would alter Brooklyn's life forever was captured on a crisp October morning outside Orlando's First Baptist Church. She had arrived early to photograph the architectural details of the historic building for her portfolio when she noticed a young mother struggling with her crying baby, while juggling grocery bags and trying to manage 2 toddlers. The woman looked exhausted, overwhelmed, and on the verge of tears herself as strangers walked past without offering help. Brooklyn's compassionate heart couldn't ignore the scene. Without thinking twice, Brooklyn set down her camera and rushed to help. She carried the grocery bags while entertaining the children with silly faces until their tears turned to giggles. As she played peekaboo with the baby, another passerby stopped to help, then another, until a small community of care had formed around this struggling family. It was a beautiful moment of humanity that reminded Brooklyn why she loved photography, to capture the good in people when they thought no one was watching. Later, as the family walked away with grateful smiles and the crowd dispersed, Brooklyn noticed a homeless veteran sitting nearby who had witnessed the entire interaction. His weathered face was lit up with the biggest smile she'd seen in weeks. "That was real kindness, young lady," he said. "Not many people stop to help anymore." Inspired by his words and the morning's events, Brooklyn asked if she could photograph him for her Invisible Angels series. He agreed, and she captured a powerful portrait of hope etched in lines of experience. Without realizing the implications, Brooklyn also took a candid shot of herself helping the family, intending to use it for a school project about community service. The image showed her kneeling beside the children with her arms around them, her face radiating joy and compassion. She posted it on Instagram that evening with the caption, "Sometimes the most beautiful photographs happen when you put the camera down and just love people. These little angels made my whole day." Zaki love in action, Daji community. Matters, blessed to be a blessing. The post received her usual engagement, a few hundred likes and dozens of heartwarming comments from followers who knew her character. But unbeknownst to Brooklyn, someone had screenshot the image and shared it in a private group chat with a completely different narrative. By the time she woke up the next morning, her innocent moment of kindness had been twisted, manipulated, and weaponized against her in ways she never could have imagined. What Brooklyn didn't know was that Madison Pierce, a popular senior who had always resented Brooklyn's growing recognition in the art department, had been waiting for an opportunity to tear her down. Madison saw the photo and immediately recognized its potential for destruction. She began crafting a narrative that would transform Brooklyn's act of kindness into something sinister, dark, and completely fabricated. The girl who loved capturing beauty was about to become the target of something truly ugly. Madison Pierce was everything Brooklyn wasn't: popular, wealthy, and ruthlessly ambitious. As student council president and captain of the varsity cheerleading squad, Madison wielded social power like a weapon, and she'd been quietly seething over Brooklyn's growing recognition in the art world. When Mrs. Rodriguez announced that Brooklyn was the leading candidate for the Ringling Scholarship, Madison's jealousy reached a boiling point. The photograph of Brooklyn with the children was exactly the ammunition she'd been waiting for. "You guys, look at this creepy picture," Madison typed in a group chat with her inner circle of followers. "Rose Martinez is literally obsessed with taking pictures of random kids. Don't you think that's weird AF? Like, who does that?" She screenshot Brooklyn's innocent post and began spinning a web of insinuations designed to plant seeds of doubt and suspicion. Madison was careful never to make direct accusations. She was too smart for that, but her implications were clear and devastating. Within hours, Madison's twisted interpretation had spread to multiple group chats across Winter Park High School. Students who barely knew Brooklyn began sharing the image with increasingly malicious commentary. "She's always walking around with that camera," someone added. "I've seen her taking pictures of kids at the park too. So creepy." Another student chimed in. "My mum says people like that start small and then it gets worse. Someone should report her." The viral nature of social media turned Madison's calculated lie into what felt like absolute truth to hundreds of teenagers who thrived on drama and scandal. Brooklyn's photograph was shared, cropped, edited, and manipulated across Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Facebook, with captions that grew more vicious with each iteration. Students who had never spoken to Brooklyn suddenly had strong opinions about her character, her motivations, and her obvious guilt of crimes she'd never committed. By Monday morning, Brooklyn walked into Winter Park High School completely unaware that her reputation had been destroyed over the weekend. The first sign something was wrong came when her best friend Ashley avoided eye contact in the hallway. Then she noticed the stares, the whispers, the way conversations stopped when she walked by. Her stomach dropped when she opened her phone to find her Instagram post flooded with comments like, "Delete this creep," and "Someone call the police on this weirdo." "What is happening?" Brooklyn whispered to herself as she read message after message accusing her of things she'd never done, never thought, never even imagined. Her hands shook as she tried to respond to the comments, trying to explain the real story. But her words were immediately drowned in a tsunami of hatred from students who had already made up their minds. The girl who had spent her life capturing beauty was about to discover just how ugly human nature could become when fueled by lies, jealousy, and the anonymity of digital crowds. The cyberbullying escalated with frightening speed as Madison's lie took on a life of its own across every social media platform imaginable. What had started as jealous whispers in group chats exploded into a coordinated digital assault that followed Brooklyn everywhere she went online. Anonymous accounts began appearing with names like "Brooklyn is a creep" and "Stop Brooklyn Now," posting her photo alongside fabricated stories that grew more disturbing and detailed with each telling. "She literally stalks kids around Orlando," read one viral TikTok that used Brooklyn's photo without permission. "My cousin saw her taking pictures of children at Disney Springs last month. Parents, be aware." The video had been viewed over 50,000 times and shared by students not just from Winter Park, but from high schools across Central Florida. Brooklyn watched in horror as her face became associated with lies so vile she couldn't even repeat them to her mother. The harassment jumped from online to real life with terrifying consequences. Someone had posted her home address in a public forum, leading to strangers driving slowly past their apartment and taking pictures. Carmen had to install security cameras after finding threatening notes left on their car windshield. "We know where you live, freak," one message read. "Leave Orlando or we'll make you leave." 12-year-old Mateo became afraid to walk to the corner store, asking his sister, "Brooklyn, why do people hate you? What did you do wrong?" School became a nightmare that Brooklyn couldn't escape. Students would deliberately bump into her in the hallways while recording her reactions for social media. Someone created fake dating profiles using her photos with degrading descriptions that made her want to disappear forever. The worst part was watching former friends like Ashley cross to the other side of the hallway rather than be seen associating with the school's new pariah. Even teachers began treating her differently, their eyes filled with suspicion and doubt. Mrs. Rodriguez tried to defend Brooklyn, but even she seemed shaken by the persistent rumors. "Brooklyn, perhaps it would be best if you took a break from photography for a while," she suggested hesitantly, "until this all dies down." The words felt like a knife to Brooklyn's heart. The one teacher who had believed in her talent was now questioning whether her passion was somehow wrong or dangerous. The scholarship opportunity she'd worked toward for years suddenly seemed impossible. The psychological toll was devastating. Brooklyn stopped eating regularly, lost 15 pounds, and developed chronic insomnia as anxiety consumed her thoughts. She'd lie awake scrolling through hundreds of hateful comments, each one feeling like a physical blow to her already shattered self-esteem. "Maybe they're right," she began thinking in her darkest moments. "Maybe I am weird. Maybe I am dangerous. Maybe everyone would be better off if I just disappeared completely." Carmen watched helplessly as her vibrant, creative daughter transformed into a hollow shell of her former self, and Brooklyn began to believe that the world would indeed be a better place without her in it. By December, The relentless cyberbullying had consumed every aspect of Brooklyn's existence like a digital cancer that metastasized beyond any hope of treatment. What had started as jealous rumors had evolved into a coordinated campaign of psychological terrorism that followed her from sunrise to midnight. She couldn't check her phone without seeing new messages telling her to kill yourself already or do the world a favor and disappear forever. The constant barrage of hatred had worn down her defenses until she began to believe that maybe they were right. The breaking point came when someone created a deepfake video using artificial intelligence to place Brooklyn's face onto inappropriate content that was then shared across multiple platforms. Within hours, the fabricated video had been viewed thousands of times and downloaded by students who continued sharing it even after the original was reported and removed. Brooklyn watched her face associated with content so vile that she vomited and couldn't stop shaking for hours afterward. "Mom, I can't do this anymore," Brooklyn sobbed to Carmen that night, her voice breaking with a pain that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. "They've destroyed everything. My reputation, my dreams, my future. It's all gone. Even if this ends someday, that video will follow me forever. No college will accept me. No one will ever believe I'm innocent." Carmen held her daughter while her own heart shattered, feeling helpless against an enemy she couldn't see or fight. The psychological warfare had succeeded in its ultimate goal. Brooklyn began to see death as her only escape from the nightmare her life had become. She started giving away her possessions, including her beloved camera that now felt tainted by association with the lies being spread about her. "Mateo can have this when he's older," she told Carmen, handing over her photography equipment. "Maybe he'll use it for something good." And the finality in her voice terrified her mother. But Brooklyn had become expert at hiding the true depth of her despair. On a cold January evening, after receiving another wave of death threats following the deepfake video's latest resurgence, Brooklyn made her decision. She couldn't bear the thought of her family continuing to suffer because of her existence. The apartment felt suffocating with the weight of shame and hopelessness that had become her constant companions. She waited until Carmen left for her night shift at the hospital and Mateo was asleep, then began writing letters she never intended anyone to read. "Dear Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to fight this. You did everything right. This isn't your fault. Please tell Mateo that his big sister loved him more than life itself, but sometimes love means letting go." As Brooklyn sealed the envelope with trembling hands, she felt a strange peace descending over her for the first time in months. She had no idea that she was about to experience an encounter that would change not just her life, but her understanding of why God sometimes allows his children to walk through valleys so dark that only divine light can guide them home. Brooklyn stood on the balcony of their third-floor apartment at 2:30 a.m., looking down at the concrete parking lot below, while Orlando's city lights blurred through her tears. The January air was crisp against her skin, but she felt numb to everything except the crushing weight of despair that had become her constant companion. In her pocket was the bottle of sleeping pills she'd been saving for weeks, collected one by one from Carmen's medicine cabinet whenever her mother worked extra shifts at the hospital. "God, if you're real, if you ever cared about me, why did you let this happen?" she whispered into the darkness, her voice barely audible above the distant traffic. "I tried to be good. I tried to help people. I used the gifts you gave me to bring beauty into the world. And look what it got me. Maybe everyone's right. Maybe the world really would be better without me in it." The silence that followed felt like confirmation of her worst fears, that she was truly alone in the universe. For months, Brooklyn had fought against the voices telling her she was worthless, dangerous, and better off dead. But the relentless digital assault had worn down her defenses until their lies began to feel like truth. Every morning brought new messages of hatred, new threats, new reminders that thousands of people wanted her to disappear. The deepfake video had been the final blow, ensuring that even if the bullying stopped, the damage to her reputation would follow her forever. She thought about Matteo sleeping peacefully in his room, unaware that his sister was about to leave him forever. The thought of her little brother growing up without her made her chest tighten with grief, but she'd convinced herself that he'd be safer without the target on their family that her existence had created. "He'll understand someday," she told herself. "When he's older, he'll realize I did this to protect him and Mom from these horrible people." Brooklyn opened the bottle of pills with hands that shook from cold and terror. She'd researched the dosage needed to ensure there would be no chance of survival, no opportunity for second thoughts or rescue. As she poured the small white tablets into her palm, counting them methodically, she felt a strange disconnection from her body, as if she were watching someone else prepare to end their life. The pain had become so overwhelming that death felt like mercy rather than tragedy. "I'm sorry, God," she whispered as she raised the handful of pills toward her mouth. "I know this probably sends me to hell, but I can't carry this anymore. Please take care of Mom and Matteo. Please don't let them blame themselves for what I'm about to do." A deal. As the pills touched her lips, Brooklyn had no idea that she was about to experience the most profound encounter of her life. One that would reveal why sometimes God allows his most precious children to walk through the deepest valleys before he reveals the mountains he's prepared them to move. As the pills touched Brooklyn's lips, a voice spoke her name with such tenderness and authority that time itself seemed to pause. Brooklyn rose. "I did do." The words carried the warmth of a father's love and the power of creation itself, causing her to freeze mid-motion as every fiber of her being recognized something eternal and sacred. The pills fell from her trembling hand, scattering across the balcony floor like seeds that would never grow into the destruction she had planned. "Don't be afraid, my precious daughter." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, filling the air around her with a presence so pure and loving that Brooklyn's legs gave out beneath her. She sank to her knees on the cold concrete, tears streaming down her face as she looked around frantically for the source of the voice that had just saved her life. "I am here. I have always been here. You are not alone, and you never have been." A figure materialized in the soft moonlight. A man whose face radiated such perfect love and compassion that Brooklyn knew immediately who he was, even though her rational mind struggled to accept the impossible reality. Jesus stood before her, not with the distant holiness she'd expected, but with the intimate tenderness of someone who had watched every tear she'd cried, felt every wound she'd carried, and loved her through every moment of her darkest season. "Lord," Brooklyn whispered, her voice breaking with a mixture of awe, relief, and overwhelming emotion. "Is it really you? But why? Why now? Where have you been while my world was falling apart?" Her questions came out in broken sobs as months of suppressed pain and confusion poured out in the presence of the one she'd thought had abandoned her. "I tried to be good. I tried to serve you with my gifts. Why did you let them destroy me?" Jesus knelt beside her on the balcony, his eyes filled with tears that reflected her own pain back to her with perfect understanding. "My beloved Brooklyn, I have been with you through every attack, every lie, every moment when you felt most alone. What feels like abandonment has been my preparation. What looks like destruction has been my protection. You think this suffering has no purpose, but I am about to show you something that will change not just your life, but the lives of thousands who are walking the same dark path you've traveled." "I don't understand," Brooklyn sobbed, her heart breaking open in the presence of such overwhelming love. "How can this pain have any purpose? How can being destroyed online be part of your plan? I just wanted to help people, to capture beauty, to make the world a little brighter with my camera. Instead, I became the most hated person in my school. I lost everything, my friends, my dreams, my future, even my will to live." Jesus reached out and gently touched her face, wiping away her tears with hands that bore scars from his own suffering. "Sweet daughter, do you remember the story of Joseph? His voice carried the warmth of a father, explaining something precious to his beloved child. His brothers sold him into slavery. He was falsely accused and imprisoned, and for years it seemed that God had forgotten him. But every betrayal, every injustice, every moment of despair was preparing him to save not just his own family, but entire nations from famine. Aye. Just as Joseph told his brothers in Genesis 50:20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Jesus continued, his voice filled with a love so profound that Brooklyn felt it healing places in her heart she didn't even know were broken. "My precious daughter, Madison intended to destroy you with her lies. The bullies intended to drive you to despair, and the enemy intended to steal your life tonight. But I have intended it all for good, to save many lives that only you can reach." Brooklyn looked into Jesus' eyes and saw not judgment or condemnation, but the infinite tenderness of a father whose heart breaks when his children suffer. "But Lord, I feel so damaged, so broken. How can someone like me, someone who almost gave up everything, help anyone else? I can barely help myself. I wanted to die tonight because I couldn't see any way forward. How does that qualify me to save lives?" "Oh, my beautiful Brooklyn," Jesus smiled with such warmth that she felt the frozen places in her soul beginning to thaw. "It is precisely because you have walked through the valley of the shadow of death that you can guide others safely through their own valleys. Who better to reach a teenager standing where you stood tonight than someone who has felt that same despair and found hope on the other side? Your scars will become your qualifications. Your pain will become your platform. And your story will become a lifeline for young people drowning in the same darkness you've experienced." Jesus stood and helped Brooklyn to her feet, his hands strong and gentle as he steadied her trembling form. "Do you see how your gift for photography, the very thing they twisted to hurt you, will become the tool I use to heal others? You will create content that speaks to hurting teenagers around the world. Your camera will capture not just images, but hope. Your words will carry the authority of someone who has walked through hell and found heaven on the other side." "But I'm so scared," Brooklyn admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "What if they keep attacking me? What if the lies follow me forever? What if I'm not strong enough to handle whatever comes next?" The vulnerability in her voice touched Jesus' heart, and he wrapped her in an embrace that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. She could feel his strength flowing into her broken places, his peace settling over her anxious spirit like a warm blanket on a cold night. "My darling daughter, perfect love casts out fear," Jesus whispered into her ear as he held her close. "You will never walk alone again. Every step you take, I will be beside you. Every word you speak for me, I will give you. Every young person you reach, I will prepare their heart to receive hope through your testimony." Remember Romans 8:28. "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This is your purpose, Brooklyn. This is why you were born. As Jesus spoke, Brooklyn felt something supernatural happening in her spirit. The crushing weight of despair that had nearly killed her was being replaced by something she had never experienced before. A sense of destiny, of divine purpose, of being chosen for something greater than she could imagine. "Lord, if you can really use my story to save lives, then I want to live. I want to fight. I want to be everything you created me to be, no matter how hard the journey becomes." Jesus smiled with the joy of a father whose daughter had just chosen life over death, hope over despair, purpose over pain. "Brooklyn, I want to show you something that will give you strength for every difficult day ahead." He gestured toward the Orlando skyline, and suddenly the darkness transformed into a vision so vivid and beautiful that Brooklyn gasped in wonder. She could see herself 5 years in the future, standing before crowds of teenagers whose faces glowed with hope and healing. This is you, at 18, speaking at the largest youth conference in America. Jesus explained, as the vision unfolded before her eyes like a movie playing across the night sky. You will share how I rescued you from the edge of suicide and turned your deepest pain into your greatest purpose. Thousands of young people who are contemplating ending their lives will choose to live because of your testimony. Parents who have lost children to cyberbullying will find comfort in your words. Schools will invite you to speak because your story carries the power to change hearts and save lives. In the vision, Brooklyn saw herself holding her camera again, but now she was using it to create content that brought healing instead of controversy. She watched herself filming testimonial videos with other cyberbullying survivors, documenting their journeys from despair to hope. She saw her Instagram account, now with millions of followers, sharing daily messages of encouragement that reach teenagers in their darkest moments around the world. You will start a ministry called Light Through Lens, Jesus continued, his voice filled with excitement for the future he was revealing. Using photography and digital storytelling, you will create safe spaces for hurting young people to share their stories and find their voices again. The very platforms that were used to tear you down will become the tools I use through you to build others up. Madison's lies will become the foundation for your truth ministry. Brooklyn watched in amazement as the vision showed her meeting with senators and congressmen, advocating for stronger cyberbullying laws that would protect other children from the nightmare she had endured. She saw herself hugging teenagers after conferences, many of them sobbing as they confessed they had been planning to take their own lives before hearing her speak. She witnessed her brother Mateo, now a young man, joining her ministry and using his own gifts to reach young boys who felt hopeless and alone. But the most beautiful part, Jesus said as tears of joy streamed down Brooklyn's face, is this. The final scene of the vision showed Brooklyn, now 25, back at Winter Park High School for a special assembly. Madison Pierce was there too, but now, as a school counselor who had dedicated her life to anti-bullying education after the devastating guilt of what her lies had cost nearly led to Brooklyn's death. In the vision, Brooklyn embraced Madison with genuine forgiveness, and together they spoke to students about the power of redemption and second chances. Lord, is this really possible? Brooklyn whispered, her heart so full of hope it felt like it might burst. Can you really turn this nightmare into something beautiful? Can you really use someone as broken as me to help heal the world? Jesus took her hands in his, and she could feel his absolute confidence in the woman he was calling her to become. My precious daughter, with me, all things are possible. The enemy meant to silence your voice forever tonight, but instead he has prepared you to speak with an authority that only comes through suffering redeemed. You will never again question whether you have value, because you will see it reflected in every life you save, every teenager who chooses hope because of your courage to keep living. Are you ready to walk into the future I have prepared for you? 2 years after her supernatural encounter with Jesus on that Orlando balcony, Brooklyn Rose Martinez stood before 15,000 teenagers at the National Youth Conference in Dallas, Texas. But she was no longer the broken, suicidal girl who had once believed the world would be better without her. She had become exactly what Jesus prophesied, a beacon of hope for young people drowning in digital darkness, living proof that God can transform our deepest wounds into our greatest weapons for healing others. My name is Brooklyn Martinez, and 2 years ago tonight, I was about to swallow a bottle of sleeping pills because cyberbullies had convinced me that I was worthless, dangerous, and better off dead. She began, her voice carrying the quiet authority that comes only from having walked through hell and emerged victorious. I was 15 years old, standing on my apartment balcony, ready to end my life because lies on social media had destroyed everything I thought I was. But that night, Jesus Christ found me in my darkest hour and showed me that my pain had a purpose I couldn't see. The arena fell into reverent silence as Brooklyn shared her testimony, her words reaching into the hearts of teenagers who recognized their own struggles in her story. Behind her on the massive screen, a video montage showed the incredible growth of Light Through Lens Ministry, the organization she had founded that now reached over 2 million young people worldwide through social media platforms, school programs, and crisis intervention services. In the past 18 months, we've received over 50,000 messages from teenagers who said our content stopped them from ending their lives. Brooklyn continued, tears flowing freely as she spoke. 50,000 young people who are alive today because God turned my worst nightmare into his greatest miracle. Every lie told about me, every sleepless night I endured, every moment I wanted to give up. It was all preparation for this calling to catch other falling angels before they hit the ground. The most powerful moment came when Brooklyn invited Madison Pierce to join her on stage. Madison, now 19 and working as a peer counselor specializing in cyberbullying recovery, walked out to thunderous applause. The two young women embraced as Madison took the microphone with tears streaming down her face. "I was the one who started the lies about Brooklyn," she confessed. "My jealousy and cruelty almost cost an innocent girl her life. But Brooklyn's forgiveness changed everything about who I am and who I want to be." And together they announced the launch of their newest initiative, Redemption Stories, a program where former cyberbullies and their victims work together to educate others about the devastating impact of online harassment and the healing power of forgiveness. "If God can heal the relationship between us," Madison said, "he can heal any hurt, bridge any divide, and transform any pain into purpose." As the conference ended with thousands of teenagers coming forward to dedicate their lives to Christ and to anti-bullying advocacy, Brooklyn looked up toward heaven and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Carmen and Mateo watched from the front row, their faces glowing with pride for the woman their daughter and sister had become. Mrs. Rodriguez, now Brooklyn's mentor and board member for Light Through Lens, captured photographs of the moment that would grace magazine covers and inspire a new generation of young activists. The girl who had once believed her story was ending had discovered it was just beginning. Brooklyn's camera, once the source of her persecution, now documented miracles happening around the world as her ministry expanded internationally. Every photograph she took, every video she created, every young person she reached carried the fingerprints of divine purpose that had been forged in the fire of her darkest season. Today, Brooklyn Rose Martinez is 21 years old and the CEO of Light Through Lens Ministry, which has prevented over 100,000 teenage suicides worldwide. Her story has been featured in documentaries, congressional hearings, and academic studies on cyberbullying prevention. But more importantly, she has learned the truth of Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." God didn't allow Brooklyn's suffering to destroy her. He used it to develop her into a world changer who could reach places in human hearts that no one else could touch. Her pain became her platform, her scars became her credentials, and her story became a lifeline for millions. If this story gave you hope, subscribe to our channel for more true testimonies of God turning pain into purpose. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that could save a life. Share this video with a teenager who needs to know their story isn't over, no matter how dark it seems right now. Comment below. Have you or someone you know experienced cyberbullying? How did faith help you through it? Your story in the comments could be exactly what someone needs to read today. Remember, if you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out. Call 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You matter, your life has purpose, and your pain can become your greatest strength. God loves you more than you know.